Cloning a repository. In this presentation, we will explore the concept of cloning a repository. Cloning a repository is the process of creating a local copy of a remote repository on your local machine. This means that you can download the entire project, including all the files and commit history, to your own computer. This allows you to work on the project files and make changes without affecting the original remote repository. Cloning a repository is an essential step in many software development workflows, as it enables developers to collaborate on a project and contribute to the codebase. There are several benefits to cloning a repository. First, it allows you to work on the project files offline without an active internet connection. This is particularly useful if you need to work on the project while traveling or in areas with limited internet access. Secondly, cloning a repository enables collaboration. When multiple developers work on the same project, each can have their own local copy of the repository, which they can then use to make changes and contribute to the codebase. Another benefit of cloning a repository is the ability to experiment with changes and new features without affecting the original project. You can make changes to your local copy, test them out, and then decide whether to incorporate them into the main project. Finally, cloning a repository creates a local backup of the project, which can be useful in case of data loss or server issues. If the remote repository becomes unavailable for any reason, you can still access your local copy and continue working on the project. To clone a repository, you first need to identify the remote repository you want to clone. This is typically done by finding the URL or web address of the repository. Next, you'll need to open a terminal or command prompt window on your local machine, depending on your operating system. Once the terminal or command prompt is open, you'll need to navigate to the directory where you want to clone the repository. To initiate the cloning process, you'll use the git clone command followed by the URL of the remote repository. For example, the command git clone http://github.com/username repository.git will clone the repository located at that URL to your local machine. The cloning process may take some time, depending on the size of the repository and your internet connection speed. Once the cloning is complete, you can navigate to the newly created directory and verify that the repository has been successfully cloned. It's important to note that the cloning process creates a complete copy of the remote repository, including all the files, commit history, and branches. This allows you to work on the project locally without affecting the original remote repository. Once you have cloned a repository, you may need to update your local copy to keep it in sync with the remote repository. To do this, you'll first need to open a terminal or command prompt and navigate to the directory where you have cloned the repository. Next, you can use the git status command to check the current branch you are on. This will help you understand the context of the changes you are about to pull. To fetch the latest changes from the remote repository and merge them into your local copy, you can use the git pull command. This will update your local repository with the latest changes from the remote repository. If there are any conflicts between your local changes and the remote changes, you'll need to resolve them manually. This may involve editing the conflicting files and choosing which changes to keep. After resolving any conflicts, you can commit your changes and push them back to the remote repository using the git add, git commit, and git push commands. It's important to keep your local repository up to date with the remote repository to ensure that you are working with the latest version of the project and to avoid potential conflicts or merge issues. In addition to cloning a repository using the HTTPS URL, you can also clone a repository using the SSH protocol. This provides an additional layer of security and authentication, as it uses your SSH key to establish a secure connection with the remote repository. To clone a repository using SSH, you'll first need to generate an SSH key on your local machine if you don't already have one. Once you have an SSH key, you'll need to add the public key to the remote repository's hosting service, such as GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket. After setting up the SSH key, you can use the SSH URL to clone the repository instead of the HTTPS URL. The command git clone git.github.com username/repository.git will clone the repository using the SSH protocol. Cloning a repository with SSH provides several benefits, including increased security and the ability to avoid entering your username and password every time you interact with the remote repository. Additionally, some hosting services may require the use of SSH for certain operations, so using SSH can help ensure a smooth and seamless development workflow. Once the cloning process is complete, you can navigate to the newly created directory and verify that the repository has been successfully cloned. In conclusion, let's recap the key takeaways from this presentation on cloning a repository. Firstly, cloning a repository creates a local copy of a remote repository on your local machine. This allows you to work on the project files and make changes without affecting the original remote repository. Cloning a repository offers several benefits, including the ability to work offline, collaborate with other developers, experiment with changes, and create a local backup of the project. The steps to clone a repository involve identifying the remote repository, opening a terminal or command prompt, navigating to the desired location, and running the git clone command with the repository's URL. Once you have cloned a repository, you can update your local copy by pulling the latest changes from the remote repository and resolving any conflicts that may arise. Finally, you can also clone a repository using the SSH protocol, which provides an additional layer of security and authentication by using your SSH key to establish a secure connection with the remote repository. By understanding the process of cloning a repository and the benefits it offers, you can effectively manage and collaborate on software projects using version control systems like Git.